What? There we go. Keep that. Keep those. Hey, this is Chris from DSX Machina, and I'm with
Dave from Rampant Wolf Games.
and we are doing a review of Folklore, The Affliction.
Second printing. Not that it really matters, but...
Cue the animation. Yeah,
Hey.
you need to have an animated logo, by the way.
I know. I'm working on it.
It costs like $20.
I know.
Okay, so Folklore, The Affliction. Mm-hmm. What's first?
So, let's run down, basically, for those who haven't played the game, it is basically as close to a pen and paper RPG as you can get without being a pen and paper RPG. Having said that, though, still need a pen and paper.
You still need a pen and paper, but you do not require... I think the definition between a traditional tabletop RPG and a board game RPG is... My important distinction is that it does not require a referee and or GM.
Correct. Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody may do so if they so desire, but I feel the moment there's a GM with a screen rolling dice creating a narrative, it is a pen and paper role-playing game.
Yeah.
And I lose interest in that altogether, because if I'm going to be running a game, and rather than playing the game, I'd rather be running my game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the biggest challenge with tabletop RPGs, because they have to create some form of automation.
Yes, exactly. And having said that, I think this one does it well. So having said that, we'll dive right into how we're going to break down how we're going to rate this game. So starting off first, category components. So how did you feel the components were in this game? Now, keeping in mind we're looking at the retail copy of this, because we didn't have the Kickstarter miniatures. So we didn't have those components, but everything else, I guess, was retail, except for the big metal coin.
The big metal coin was awesome.
Yeah.
Once I told you what it was for.
Yes. Once we found talisman.
Yes.
So.
From a production standpoint, I really like it. The artist from this game, I looked it up, and it's one of those things where I start to read between the lines, and I thought it was really interesting. The guy who did the art for this game was the same guy who did the art for Grimslingers.
Oh, it is. Okay.
It is the same artist as Grimslingers. However, I need to stress, it is not the same writer.
Yes.
Of Grimslingers, and it makes me wonder where he does a lot. He's fantastic. I mean, he's a fantastic artist. But I feel mechanically Grimslingers is quite a few steps behind.
Yes.
Folklore when it comes to mechanics. So when it comes to art style, yeah, pretty solid. Quality components. The board is interesting. I worry about the longevity
of the board.
Well, not necessarily whether it will stand it, but specifically the number of cities and locations.
Yeah.
How many missions can you play with Folklore: The Affliction, the core game? Because this is already an expansion.
With the core game, without the expansions, it is 6 stories with 2 chapters each, so it's 12 sessions, basically.
Yeah.
In theory.
Yeah, and there's only 3 cities on the map.
Correct. And all the expansions continue to expand on the existing map.
landscape.
So
yeah.
there is no extra maps.
Feels like you would run out of ideas after a while, unless there's a lot of narrative between those locations.
There really seems to be, because you take a look at the Dark Tales expansion, and it has 10 or 9 stories with, again, 2 or 3 chapters each. So that's 27 to 30 chapters, so sessions. Then they have, with the character expansion kit, a 3rd storybook, which has, I think, another 9 or 10 stories with 2 to 3 chapters each. And you end up being able to carry your character. You can either carry your character all the way through all of that, or every time you start a new story, you can grab a new character and you bring them in. They have a set way of building them up right off the bat. They get a certain amount of lore points, and so you're not starting off at a base character, so you can change at any point. And they have a total of 12 character classes if you combine everything all together. So there's a lot of replayability, and I am interested, though, like you said, to see how how they keep the longevity of that small world map.
It's a relatively simplistic world map for what it does. I mean, I actually found what they did in Grimstingle's Northern Territory a bit more interesting because you just got a deck of 52 playing cards and it told you how to arrange them every single time you played. So there was unlimited playability because you could say, on this map, the Queen of Hearts represents this location. And so you could play around with it as much as you want.
Yeah.
I still don't care for the rock, paper, scissors mechanic, and I think the campaign mode needs a better system. What else?
So component.
No. How would your thoughts on the component quality?
Yeah. So component wise, I think everything you need is there. It's funny that there was one thing that they don't tell you what it's for, which is there's these little cubes, and we figured out that they are used for tracking ammo.
Oh, okay.
But we didn't know that going into it. But it's got a really well tutorial system, like a really good English there. Thank God Grandma's not watching. But yeah, it's another one where you could put aside the rule book, open up the storybook, and it'll start taking you through the tutorial parts. So as a component rating, the manual and the storybooks really well written from my standpoint, because you can just pick it up and start going. And what I ended up having to do was I was still trying to read the rule book instead of just going that way. And so I had some troubles the first time through, but as soon as I realized, okay, put the rule book aside, just let the storybook tell you how the game plays, and by the time you're done, the first chapter is like, I got you. I see what you're doing there.
That's something I think Grimslingers needs a lot of work on, because after a couple of games playing Grimslingers, my fiance still doesn't know how to play it. It's amazing. She's like, I'm rolling. I was like, I'm drawing cards. Am I doing this right? Yes, you are. I'll play this. Is that okay? Yep. Okay. Still don't know what I'm doing. I'll say I thought it was interesting, and I don't know if the artist is also the guy who does the production design, because I noticed not only is the art done by the same guy, but the production, like the presentation of the manual, like the very colors used, and the way the storybook was used, like just even to the orientation, the way the tables are placed, the colors and palettes used are identical to Grimslingers. I mean, if I were to whip out the storybook to Grimslingers, you would say, "Oh, that's just a small version. That's a pocket version of Folklore." It's almost like this is a recent game. What's the date on this puppy?
Second edition was released. It was 2018.
2018, yeah. Northern Territory came out in 2018 as well. Grimslingers comes out a little bit before. It almost seems like they worked on the first Grimslingers, designed all of that, and said, let's do Folklore. It's like, what do we should do for the layout? Oh, just copy-paste.
Well, actually, no, because the first edition of Folklore came up before. So
okay.
First
So
edition
it's the other
of
way
Folklore
around.
was 2016 or 17.
Yeah, so it's the other way around.
Yeah.
They
tried to scale it down and it didn't work.
No. Like I said, the scaling is fine. And I'll go into the next step, but I said the production design is really good. I didn't miss the fact we didn't have miniatures. It didn't bother me whatsoever.
No, it didn't bother me either. I mean, and that's one of the things I'm running into these days is if you have the miniatures, it's like, great. So either I got to paint them or else they're just great miniatures. Whereas if you got standees, they're painted.
Yeah, I also have no problem with the use. Some people have issues with the use of mini poker cards, the smaller.
Oh yeah,
I don't have a problem if you're not playing a deck builder, so you're not shuffling that deck constantly. Because the only thing I find, the most annoying thing I've ever seen in a deck builder was deck building a mini deck of cards. Because Big Book of Madness is a deck builder with a mini deck of cards, and boy, is that annoying. Because you can't shuffle. You just have to top hand to shuffle.
Yeah.
So I had no problem with this because it's not a deck builder. You just grab the cards you want and so forth. So I had no problem with the mini cards because there's obviously a lot of cards being used.
Yeah.
What else?
So let's go into mechanics now. Mechanics for this one, I found I like the mechanics, but I think it's going to feel very familiar to a lot of pen and paper RPG people, because the one thing I found was it's like grab the percentile dice, and I'm just like, now for you, when I said that to you, you're just like, well, it's that dice and that dice. So it was something you're just like, well, yeah, of course.
It's something I'm very much used to.
Yeah.
I can't remember the system that really loved using it. I know old D&D, second edition D&D, was madly in love with percentile dice, something that was eliminated with third edition and has never seen the light of day since.
Yep.
And I also know that, and I want to say GURPS.
Yes.
used the percentile system.
Yes, it did.
It's not a bad system because you have a good range.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is understanding your rates of failure.
Yes.
Right? Which is something that D&D gets away with because D&D doesn't have to be a fun game. Because D&D, it's a storytelling game. It's about actions and reactions and so forth. If someone says, I want this game to be fair and balanced, you're playing the wrong game.
Yep.
That's why board games have a bit more pressure because they are analyzed by different eyes. And so the system here was interesting, the fact that the numbers to hit somebody were the values were quite low. So there was hardly a round that passed where we weren't wailing on somebody or they weren't wailing on us.
Yes. Yeah, because our defense value, your defense values, ours sat in the mid-30s without modifiers. And the
best
guys,
modifiers get you to 40, 45 top. You're still below the 50-50.
You're still below 50-50. And then the bad guys...
If that was in real life, you'd be dead.
And the bad guys are sitting somewhere between 40s and 50s without modifiers. So, but still, it was that one thing where, you throw those... The one thing I did like with this system, and that was we never did have one in the negative, but the positive was the devastating strikes. I really enjoyed that.
I pulled off a devastating strike.
Yeah.
It was on a person that could have been taken out by a regular strike, but...
Yeah.
It was neat to have it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, when you're using a percentile dice, it's just a 1 in 10 chance.
Yeah.
Because the moment you roll double zeros, you got it.
Exactly.
Where in traditional percentile dice, you have to roll 0-0. So you do actually have to roll 10 on both dice.
Okay.
Right? Where in the dice you had, if you roll 0-0 with the percentile dice, you already have 100. So you don't have to roll the second die. So it increases by times 10 the number of chances you can roll a devastating strike.
Yeah.
So that's entirely a choice. Within the game, which dice you use. Because if it's only a natural 100, good luck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that would be very hard to hit.
For me, the other thing I thought was interesting was the effectively two different types of combat.
The skirmish and the encounter.
You have the tile mapped encounters, and then you have the vague encounter. Oddly enough, one that matches 5th edition D&D, and the other one that matches 4th edition D&D, and they put it into the same game.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, I found the 4th edition one more satisfying because it allowed you to properly strategize where you were going.
Yes.
Where the vague abstract one, where you're simply attacking a guy,
yeah,
there wasn't much. I roll a die, I hit, and then he rolls a die and he hits, and I just felt like I don't think I'm doing very much. I don't feel as if I'm accomplishing as much as... And I knew they put it in there because otherwise the game would be 3 hours long.
Yeah, but the thing too I found with those skirmishes versus the encounters, it was enough to get you... to keep you interested in where you're going because you're saying, okay, are we going to go off-road? Are we going to stay on the road?
Well, I don't know. It's one of those things where I never felt... This is something I have an opinion of. I don't think you need to have a battle every 30 seconds in a game to keep your interest if the game is itself thematically is interesting.
Yeah, I guess it harkens back
like the story element, because there are story cards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few story cards. And I felt that if the story cards were fun and interesting, then I wouldn't need to have the battle. So regardless of whether I had a battle or not, if you're enjoying the story, enjoying what you're doing, that could be enough. And if you have to use these... Oh, here we go, a battle again. And you go, oh, I can't wait because I've been bored most of the time.
That's true.
Once again, it depends on your group.
Yeah, and it just reminds me a lot of the kind of the Final Fantasy thing, where you're venturing across the world map and it's like, oh, encounter. You don't see it coming, it's just, boom, encounter.
Oh, yeah, just like the zooms in and then suddenly, and then you don't know who you're fighting. And you see like 3 dragons show up and you're like, shouldn't we have seen those?
Yeah. Shouldn't someone have been just like,
That's why I liked Xeno Shift, because you could see everything on the map.
Yeah.
So like, do I want to go out and encounter that? I can see what the creature is, and I love when you don't want to fight them, but when you get close and you aggro them, and they start running after you, and you're like, oh, screw it, might as well turn around and face them.
No, you're talking about Xeno Shift because that's a board game.
No, right. Sorry. Not Xeno Shift. Oh boy. Xenoblade, which is the new version. Xenosaga.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the PS2 game. Thank you for correcting me.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, it's just like, I'm thinking of Xeno Shift, I'm just like,
Nope.
You can't see what's coming. It's a bad day.
Yeah. No,
Every day's a bad day in that game.
When you're playing any of the Xenosagas for PS2, yeah, you could see the opponents on the game on the game board as you're playing.
Yeah.
As you're moving your character around, you can see them aggroing after you.
Yeah.
Which Final Fantasy would pop up and do later, past I think 12. You would see the enemies on the board.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but back in the old days, playing Final Fantasy 7 or 8, you would just walk around an empty landscape and suddenly dragons.
Yeah. So, and that was actually something for me, kind of, I guess that kind of scratched my nostalgia-ish. Because it was just kind of like, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Oh, okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah, but it also brings up what I thought, something I brought up when we were playing it, the humorous irony of fantasy settings, where it's really dangerous to live. Don't live. It's like, you better be in those cities, otherwise you are screwed.
Do not step off the road.
Like, you walk off the road and just like, apparently they're just goblins and orcs and bandits just waiting for you to walk off a road and then kick the crap out of you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Just like in Canada. The moment you walk off the roads, bears are waiting. He's like, oh, is he coming off the road? Yeah. Off the road? All right, everyone, dive bomb him.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost like, oh God, it's like pitch black.
Yes.
And the forest is just the darkness.
Yes.
You're there, that's it, you're dead.
Yeah.
But you get close to it, suddenly spikes will come out and pull you in. Like, that's it. You got killed by the Canadian forest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. Folklore is as dangerous as it is. Like, man, a lot of bandits.
Yeah. And so the other mechanic, which we were just talking about prior to filming, that I don't like about this game, but you can kind of mitigate it with certain things, is your abilities use your power points. And at the beginning of the game, you only have a certain amount of power points. And I get the kind of theory behind that one is sort of, well, if you're just cooking off your abilities all the time, then you're not ever getting tired, and I guess they're trying to simulate endurance. But if that's the case, give me potions that I can drink to get that mana or power.
Well, maybe
back.
there are. I mean, I've not seen.
We couldn't find any.
Okay, I haven't seen any. I haven't seen the whole deck of equipment.
Yeah,
cards.
we couldn't find any, and we couldn't find any in the town services. Other than every time you hit a town, you can stay at the inn, and that recharges your power points, which again felt very Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, recharge your mana and recharge your health and stuff. And so it's kind of like, so you can mitigate it that way. But for me, just kind of, I just felt like I want to be able to be like, can I take some mana potions or whatever you want to call them with me, so I can just, and you know, because yeah, there's nothing worse than having a really good ability. And there was one point at the beginning of the game where I was just a kid, and you weren't in this one, but I summoned a Drake, so I had a little Drake companion with me. It used up all my power points, so I just basically flipped over all my ability cards because I couldn't do anything with them till we got to town. So we had to journey all the way to town, and you know, we're getting attacked, and we're like, I wish I could use my abilities, but I can't.
Well, I mean, there's some precedent in a lot of games that include that, where you can't use all your abilities all the time. I mean, even D&D has limited uses per day for some of their items, encounter powers or daily powers for 4th edition. So it's not unprecedented.
No.
I don't think I have a problem with it. But if one thing is for certain is that they have to be good. I think if it's something you can only use a couple times during a game, I would want it to be special.
Yes.
Right? So you have part of the game is mitigating when you should be using it and when you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I found it was really interesting in our game that we ran past. Like the final battle involved us running into a building before the monsters killed us.
Yes, the cemetery.
And there was no final battle, otherwise we would have lost.
Yes. Yeah, because we were hurt bad. Yeah.
Which is one of those things that it makes me curious whether or not how much luck plays a factor in your success of that game.
True.
Because it's one of those situations where, can we talk a way out? Can I roll well enough? Do I beat every encounter? Like, well, it's one of those situations where you look at the math and go, okay, what are the chances? I mean, that's the issue. When you make a game too difficult, then it becomes, how good are our die rolls?
Yeah.
Can we make decisions that'll make things better?
Well, and see, that's where I think that one was based on our decisions, because there was things that we could have searched and looked and went after, but we're just like, no, we got to get to the end because you're hurt bad, I'm hurt bad. We just need to make a beeline for the thing, crack open the door, and get the heck out of here.
Yeah. But of course, you don't die in the game. You come back as a ghost who, oddly enough, has life, which is weird.
But it has power points, and to use your abilities, you have to spend your power, which then you can kill yourself using that power.
Exactly. So it's a small moment of reprieve. So if you get killed early, then you got a very limp ghost.
Yes. And
then if the ghost dies,
you're dead altogether.
Then you're dead altogether.
Yeah. So it's a full character wipe on that one.
Yeah.
And it actually does talk about what to do with full team wipes in the manual, but I didn't bother reading because we never had one of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, we ended up having someone die in our game, and you end up just going to see the physician, and he somehow lays hands on her. Poof, they're back. So they're not.
Are you
dead.
the Miracle Max?
It must be the Miracle
the king
Max.
all those years?
Yeah. Must be.
The king's sinking sun fired me.
So let's talk about theme. How do you think this game Do you think this game worked well with its theme, or do you think it was just pasted on? I felt it's an interesting theme because it's not your traditional fantasy orcs and goblins and stuff. It's your it's your supernatural. It's like the werewolves, the vampires, the ghouls and stuff. So it's more. It's actually, I guess it's kind of more of a mix. And for me, I like the theme. I felt the theme worked well with this game. I didn't feel like it was just there just cuz. And that was due, I think, to the storytelling, possibly.
I liked the storytelling. I was very disinterested in the theme.
Okay.
I felt that I was waiting when we're playing the game. I'm like, because this is something I was actually having a conversation with someone about this yesterday. Mm-hmm. There's a resounding difference between setting and story. And I was talking to him. He asked me if I ever played World of Warcraft, and I said I made a conscious decision rather than a subconscious decision to not. And the reason why is that I was not interested in any way in what that game was selling. I like storytelling. I play Mass Effect over that. And he said, well, there's a story. I go, no, stuff happens.
Yes.
Stuff happens. And stuff happening is not a story. That's just stuff happening. Mm-hmm. That's why the entire mythology of Lord of the Rings occurs in a 5-minute prologue, and then we're introduced to characters who have an arc.
Yes.
Because we're not talking about the mythology. That's the Silmarillion, and it's horrible. Right? And that's the whole point. And so I like stories, but board games generally don't put a lot of effort in their story. They just have settings and things happen. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing about Grimslingers I liked more than Folklore. Folklore felt as if there was a story. Mm-hmm. I felt that the characters had weight. Mm-hmm. They were named. They had a personality. They had something that was distinctive about them. And you were together. You could assume a role. I felt that I was connected to who I was playing. It's just the mechanics weren't very strong. Here I'm playing Witch Doctor. And Witch Doctor... Right? It's the same issue with Nemesis.
Witch Hunter.
Yeah, Witch Hunter.
Yeah.
Witch Doctor, Witch Hunter. I keep on thinking Witch Doctor, Witch Hunter. But the same thing happens with Nemesis, where it's like you're playing Captain, Techie, Soldier. And it's like, you couldn't have given them names.
But that's because you're supposed to name your character.
Yeah, but that's the difference. In a role-playing game, I'm creating my own character. I'm rolling stats. I'm selecting personnel, and then I'll name the character based on those random adjustments and the decisions I made. If you're predetermining everything for me beforehand, then you assign the name. That's my thoughts.
Fair enough.
You are giving me a character class that is completely defined and I can't adjust in any way, then you should probably finish the job and give them a name and personality.
Fair enough.
That's what I think. And if I'm going to be running a character in Folklore, and I'm playing the Witch Doctor, and all of his stats have been predetermined, Witch Doctor, Witch Hunter, then I think, personally, they should have gone the extra mile, at least given him a personality. Mm-hmm. Flip a card over, and a whole thing, or an arc. And it's one of those things where, why can't there be a game where it's like, if Witch Hunter is here, he gets to do this, or you get a personal arc. Like, why can't games do that? And it's one of those things where if you are completely detached, there's a difference between running a campaign that's been pre-written for D&D,
yeah,
and then run that the GM has designed, where you're making changes to the setting around you, and the GM is adapting, and things are happening to you that matter to you.
Yeah.
When you're playing a board game like this, it doesn't really matter. So the theme felt very thin. I wasn't like, oh, so there's wolves and then skeletons, and then we have to go kill somebody. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I think probably if we got further into it, if the theme does start to shine, it actually does have a coherent story, because I've found that I think that was just the tutorial missions.
No, yeah, I know, but there's a difference between us. Because once again, people get confused between a story and stuff happening. Yeah,
but I mean, there's in the later stuff, there's stuff happening that pertains to the story.
Yeah,
and
like I said, I would love to be. I'm waiting for that game where I go, that game had a good story. I want to play it again immediately because I want to know what happens next. I have never played a board game that made me think that, and that includes Gloomhaven.
But let's not talk about Gloomhaven.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also the one thing that we didn't play with that you can include with this game is if you have it, it's called I believe it's called Rumors, and basically it's side quests. And you can end up leveling up your guys doing side quests. And again, that felt like more of this, let's introduce more of these kind of almost video game RPG elements to the game.
Yeah.
So you can go off and do some stuff and grind away and get some better equipment before you go and take on Big Bad. Now, the one thing that we did find was that we were playing, and like the story, the choices you make in the game, though, and the story choices seem to weave together really well, because there's one point where at the end of the tutorial, like the first story, you defeat this guy. Going into the second story, they want you to go check out something. I'm trying to be very vague because I don't want to ruin it for anybody that hasn't played the game. So you're sent off to some other place. Well, on that way there, if you pull certain encounters, you will actually encounter the same Big Bad you just killed in the story before, but it actually says he hasn't recovered from his last encounter, have his stats going into this. And it's just like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
so it
but
is
once again, though, that's not story. I'm sorry, that's not story. What I mean by story is take what happens in this session. Could you turn it into a movie? If the answer is no, it's not a story. If it's not an episode of a TV show, or an episode of a good TV show, that's not a story. If stuff is just happening, it's not a story.
Yeah, but I think you'd find it hard to have that much story in a board game.
Well, that's the challenge, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. And once again, I wouldn't say it's entirely impossible. I think there are games that have come close to that. I thought Fog of Love does a pretty good job of trying to weave this perceived story. I thought even Time Stories
Haven't played it yet.
implies something like that. I kind of enjoy how that works because I feel like there's a story. I'm feeling I want to say connected to the characters, but connected to what we're doing. So, like I said, I'm not dissing the theme. I'm just saying the fact that, and I would love if I had it, I would play it a lot. I think me and my fiance would enjoy that game because it's better mechanically. But I'll tell you right now, the one thing I want more than anything, I wish, and if they ever watch this video, I tell you will have a customer. Take this mechanic and merge it with Grimslingers.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, this is generic fantasy setting number 4. There are some things that are unique, but at the end of the day, a lot of it's very derivative. Grimslingers, I thought, was probably one of the most unique settings for a board game that I'd seen in a long time. Artwork, very, very good. I like the idea. And if Folklore of the Affliction, this game, was Grimslingers in this format, I think it would be... It wouldn't be marginally better. It'd be exponentially better.
Yeah.
It would be way more interesting, way more dynamic. Like I said, I would play it I would play it to completion if Grimslingers and Folklore. If you slam the Grimslingers setting into the Folklore engine, oh my god, I would be sold.
Yeah. Well, maybe they're going to be doing that because they have another Kickstarter coming up in March, and we'll see what ends up coming out of that one. So maybe they'll expand it more. So we've already talked about story and the artwork. Play length. I felt the play length was spot on.
Yeah, it was about an hour. It's actually surprising. That's the reason why they don't give you a lot of the tile battles, because too many of those would be 2.5 hours. I thought it was pretty good, especially for 2 people. Yeah,
exactly. And I've played it with more than 2. It plays up to 5.
Which is unusual.
Yeah, I haven't played... Yeah, because usually it's 4.
Yeah, almost every single tabletop board game is 4 players. They don't bother trying to push beyond that.
Yeah, and I played it with 3. I haven't played it with 4 yet, but even 3, it didn't feel like it dragged on. It was... You felt like you were always... Something was happening.
Yeah.
So that was good. Scalability. So going from, how the monsters scale in strength... and encounters and skirmishes scale based on character count, I felt worked well.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And sometimes even the thing that I found hilarious was the skirmishes. Sometimes, because their strength of the skirmish is based on a die roll. It's just like, you encounter an angry mob. Okay, 3 players, roll. Oh, it's only one guy.
It's just an angry guy.
It's an angry guy. It's
just Bob.
It's angry Bob, not angry mob.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like...
Yeah, because we fought an angry... because we fought...
We fought an angry Bob.
We fought 2 different bandits. One was a wimp. The other one was a pushover. The other one was not.
Yeah.
And then it's like, wow. And then we fought one guy, a gravedigger, who kicked the crap out of us, despite he looking like...
Yes.
Old Man Hibbert. And then we jump into another one. Oh, God, angry mob. And it turns out it was just like a...
Angry Bob.
Just a fat guy with too much mayo. He slapped us. It's like, well, that was it. It was over. But oddly enough, the gravedigger was just like, holy... That's what messed us up the most, was just one dude with a scythe and a long beard. It was like...
I think it was death in disguise. Explains the scythe.
Okay. If you want to make yourself feel better.
Crappy die rolls is what happened there.
Exactly.
So, wrap up with, say, rating out of 10. What would you give it?
I'd give it a 7.
Okay.
7 to 7.5. I would think continued plays might increase that. But I like where it's going, and if I was going to get a story-based tabletop RPG, I think this is probably on the top of that list.
Yeah. I'm going to land probably 8.5, 8. Just because I want more story. And I feel like because I enjoy it well, it's kind of one of those things that's like, okay, well, I'm going to play this a lot, and then I got nothing left. Yeah. So I want more. I wish there was some more story to it, and there is. I mean, they've got, like, there's more story journals online, and there's more community-created content. But as you said, it's all taking place in this one little map.
Yeah.
So hopefully they expand the world of Kreml. I'm pretty sure I've got that right. That's what I give it. So 8.5 and 7.5.
Yeah, 7.5, 8.5. All right. So anyway, if you guys want to see an extended playthrough, we have it on my channel there.
Link will be like right about here, probably.
No, it's going to be
down there.
It's going to be down there. I'm not smart enough to put it up here. Besides, I'm not going to cover our beautiful faces. But anyway, like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll do more of these. So I've been, and he has been.
And remember, the rules are just suggestion. Play the game how you want to play it.